exiles whom I have sent into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. Build houses and live in them. Plant gardens and eat what they produce. Take wives and have sons and daughters. Take wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage, that they may bear sons and daughters. Multiply there and do not decrease. But seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf. For in its welfare you will find your welfare. Holy wisdom, holy word.
Thanks be to God.
After reflecting on this passage, I realized something. I've never truly, for more than a couple months, lived someplace other than Pittsburgh. I am a born and raised Ginzer who bleeds black and yellow and uses terms like necky, which I am very necky, and red up. And this city is one that I have loved all my life. And most of my family still live here. All my friends are here. Every faith community I have been heavily involved with has been situated right here. I love our skyline, which you can see, maybe through that window if you're far enough. And in my opinion, it's one of the least generic city skylines. And I appreciate all of the little towns that make up this place, and how each neighborhood has its own identity and commercial core. And I like that my main source of local news is from the Pittsburgh Reddit, where I hear ravings about our city from visitors and people wanting to move here. Pittsburgh feels like, and always has felt like, home to me. My devotion to Pittsburgh is not a blind one either. I truly feel like its grittiness is part of my soul. We aren't always the cleanest city, or the most put together. I mean, look at our road system. And we aren't fancy like some of the East Coast or West Coast cities, but I think we have soul. A soul that embraces our industrious past and our kind hearts yearning for a better future. A soul that formed and has been formed by one of our most famous presidents, Mr. Fred Rogers. So I think the phrase, "Won't you be my neighbor," is not one that is a despite phrase, but a because of phrase. It's not despite our grit that we are neighbors. It's not despite our cultural differences that we are neighbors. It's not in spite of our socioeconomic status, our gender identity, our sexuality, our race, our ethnicity, our immigration status, housing status, or even how we dress that we are neighbors. I believe it is because of these things, not in spite of them, that we say the phrase, "Won't you be my neighbor?" Because we are part of this city, because we do live next to each other, shop at the same Giant Eagle, because we walk through the same parks, because our differences call us to be more empathetic people. Because of all of these things, we ask the question, won't you be my neighbor? Now, Pittsburgh, for me and many in this room, feels like a place of home and a place of neighborliness. But sometimes it can also feel like a place of exile, a place foreign, like the ways the Israelites felt isolated in a new land. So I was talking to Steve earlier this week about how if I have kids, the places that I went to when I grew up are not the same places they will go. The same local restaurants and stores don't really exist. Now, this was actually not quite the case for me and my parents. Sure, some things had changed, but generally speaking, the same restaurants that my mom ate at in high school were the same ones that I ate at in high school. I remember in particular the King's Family Restaurant at the Waterworks. So my grandma actually used to take my mom there for breakfast before school every day in 1983. And they would, enjoy some time together. My mom, not being a morning person, probably very groggily, but it was still a good time for them to spend as mother and daughter. So fast forward 30 years later, and I oftentimes went to that King's, and in particular, after homecoming, I went there with my friends to enjoy some late night food. Now, that restaurant was torn down in 2016. Generational enjoyment gone, and replaced with a nondescript bank. I think in particular it might be a key bank, but that's besides the point. Because it's no longer a place for families, a place for rowdy teenagers late at night, a place for community. Instead, it's a place for money, to make more money by lending itself out. A place devoid of shared smiles over a plate of pancakes or laughs over a frowny brownie sundae. Over time, it can feel like we are in a foreign land, especially over these last 15 years or so here in Pittsburgh. Things have changed drastically. And as our city sees sort of increased investment, oftentimes this comes at the cost of our community. As focus shifts from neighborliness to financial gains, many folks become exiles. They're priced out of the neighborhood where their family has lived for generations. They can't find a good paying job that keeps up with rent. And deciding between groceries and gas money becomes a daily battle of credit and debt. And sometimes we become exiles in a foreign land that we once called home. We feel alienated from our neighborhood, from our neighbors, from our friends, and from our family as things change, as our physical spaces change, and as the people around us change. In this passage from Jeremiah, God does not call us to live into the foreignness that we sometimes feel. When we feel misplaced, unwanted, like strangers in our community, it can often make us want to retreat, be apart, make strongholds where we can feel safe. Even thinking about our current political climate and how uncomfortable we feel with folks who disagree with us, and how often we run to our siloed Facebook groups, Twitter posts, Discord channels, and Reddit threads. We don't experience our community when we throw up walls and plug our ears. We don't learn, we don't love, and we don't grow. In Babylon, God instructed the Israelites to grow. They were to build buildings, put down roots, grow their families by marrying their children with the people who they saw as foreign. They were to pray for their nation because their welfare became intimately intertwined with the welfare of their neighbors. And one of the things that is most striking to me was that God told them to plant gardens. Now I have to admit, I am not a great gardener. I've had allergies to trees, flowers, and grasses for most of my life, and I have said that at one point some of my house plants tried to kill me. They said they were non-pollinating, but that was a lie. And I am also one of the few people that I know that has killed multiple succulents and cacti. So last week, I was walking through the Northside Farmers Market. I occasionally walk through it, but usually don't buy anything, as a lot of the fruits I have weird allergies and can't eat. A lot of the ones that are grown here, so I oftentimes skip over that. But I do occasionally grab like a loaf of bread, or some root veggies, or a nice bunch of solid at least like 14, 15 inches. So as I was struck and just staring at these mums, something overtook me, and I decided I'm going to buy these mums. Even though I'm a plant killer, I decided to go out on a risk. I've since learned that mums can be a little finicky and need a lot of water, so I have been watering it plenty. But I can proudly say that in the weekend, a little over a week that I've had them, they have not died. And I've placed them proudly at the entrance to my apartment. Gardening is not an easy practice. It involves knowing the land that you sit on and what the soil is like. You have to learn to take care of a specific plant so it can thrive. And you must know your neighbors, as their actions can make tending a garden easier or a lot more difficult. Gardening is a communal activity that's not always about productivity. Yeah, in this passage, God asks people to plant gardens and eat from them. But gardens can also be a place of respite that don't always bear fruit for us to eat. Take, for instance, the gardens that we maintain here along the front of the church. The beautiful flowers are generally not edible, but do add to our block. They brighten it up and lift the spirits of our neighbors. It helps our environment by having a haven for pollinators. I actually saw honeybees just swarming around the purple asters this week. They loved it. And gardens are great at absorbing rainwater, so there's less ponding and flooding in our neighborhood. They give a peaceful space for folks at the hospital, as I see nurses and patients throughout the week taking time to sit on the curb and look at our flowers, as they take a needed break from whatever stressors they've experienced just across the street. Gardening is not all about production. It's not all about making money. I think it's about neighborliness, about hospitality, about creating a space for community. We are called to show hospitality, to show neighborliness to each other. Like the Israelites in Babylon, we're called to plant gardens here, become part of our community, and seek the welfare of our city, for its welfare is our welfare. The gospel passage that we read today reinforces this attitude. On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus and his disciples passed through a village where 10 men with skin diseases approached them asking for healing. Jesus healed them and asked them to visit their local priests so that they could be seen as clean by the community leaders and they could rejoin their community. But one of them turned back and threw himself at Christ's feet, thanking him and praising God for the healing. Jesus asked, "Where are the other 9? There was silence. And then he proclaimed that this one man's faith had made him well. This man was different from the other men that Jesus healed that day. The other 9 were Jewish, part of his culture. But this man was a Samaritan, a foreigner in the land. And he did something quite exceptional. This foreigner, a perceived lesser than individual of the time, was the only one of the 10 that truly was living into the commandment of neighborliness and hospitality highlighted here in Jeremiah. He was not just interested in the transaction, the service of healing. He instead turned back so that he may have a relationship with Jesus. Even though this man could not provide anything material in return, he did return with his thanks and praise. He truly was concerned with the relationships and community of this place where he was a foreigner. And in his own way, really lived into that last part of this Jeremiah passage as he turned to prayer. He praised God as he returned to Jesus to show his thanks. Prayers of praise and thanksgiving for what Jesus was doing, what God was doing in the community. And then God, through Jesus, was seeking the welfare of his community. He was healing them, eating with them, forming relationships with them who would ultimately die for their sake. But for the sake of the welfare of God's people, that's not where the story ended. As the binding of death was loosed, as a new eternal life with Christ began 3 days later, that we still enjoy into eternity. A new life focused on the welfare of all God's people in every place, in every time, in every way. A new life focused on mercy, grace, peace, and most importantly, love. But seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare you will find your welfare. Pray for our neighborhood, for our city, for our country, people of God. Pray during the times when you feel like you are in exile, as a foreigner in this land. Pray for the welfare of this place and its people. And remember these words from Micah 6:8. What does the Lord require of you but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God? God is already walking these streets. God is already seeking justice and meeting God's people through kindness and grace. God is already seeking the welfare of this place. Now we get the opportunity to join in that work, to love this block, to love this city, to love God's people as we seek their welfare. We have already tilled the soil. God supplies the rain and the sunlight. Let's continue to tend to our garden as we see the flowers bloom and the community flourish through God's love. Thanks be to God for that.